As DeWine mentioned, hate groups are among the visitors to Springfield in the last few days. I talked about that with a historian who monitors extremist and hate groups in Ohio and around the country as a senior research fellow for the Anti-Defamation League.
The idea of immigrants eating pets is a long-standing anti-immigrant trope that I've been able to trace back 50 years, and other people have been able to trace back longer, used to actually incite hatred and fear against immigrants. So it's not like as bad as they are. It's not like a false allegation leveled against a politician or a celebrity. It's something that's leveled against an entire community with malice intended. And there are other tropes like that. Like another long-standing one is the idea that immigrants bring disease. And people have also tried to make that claim about folks in Springfield, and it's also false. But the whole idea is to attempt to demonize immigrants, to make them see other, to arouse people's anger or fear against them, to get, in some cases, to get them to leave, to intimidate them to leave. And so it's a really pernicious, damaging sort of trope.
Do you think that there's a distinction made between legal immigrants and illegal immigrants, or are some of these things just all immigrants?
So anti-immigrant sentiment in the United States tends, in terms of the rhetoric, tends to focus on undocumented migrants. However, the people who use such tropes don't actually try. When you look at the targets that they're being used against, they don't really make any effort to distinguish between undocumented migrants or migrants with legal status. And so, for example, the vast majority of the Haitians in Springfield have legal status, but they're routinely being called illegal immigrants and demonized as being people there who are there unlawfully. And so, that's another way that people are trying to obscure the facts, in order to incite this sort of anti-immigrant sentiment.
And those rumors are really bringing out the neo-Nazi white supremacist groups. I mean, Blood Tribe, Patriot Front, Proud Boys, even the KKK. Vance,
Trinity Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, yeah.
Yes. Vance even kind of minimized the Proud Boys as about a dozen of them. But there's a lot of these groups that have shown interest in this, right?
Well, white supremacists are always quick to try to exploit any sort of division that they can find, or any sort of issue that's in the news that they can find. And since white supremacists are anti-immigrant to begin with, something like this, people raising these false allegations about Haitian immigrants in Springfield, is basically a gift to them. And so a variety of different white supremacist groups have rushed to try to exploit that in different ways. Ones further away have done it through online rhetoric and demonization. The ones closer have actually put out flyers, or some showed up. The idea of how many show up doesn't really matter. I mean, most extremist groups are comparatively small when you compare them to mainstream groups. But does it really matter if there are 5 or 10 or 20 neo-Nazis marching in your neighborhood? That's going to be intimidating and scary, no matter what the exact number is.
One thing I thought was interesting is Benny Johnson boosted the rumors early on. Taylor Hansen has gone to Springfield, is putting up videos on X showing interviews with residents. Matt Christensen and Tim Pool shared memes. These are all right-wing commentators who were also named in an indictment. The Department of Justice is alleging that in working for Tenet Media, they were unknown to them, financed by Russian nationals to distribute Russian government messaging to American audiences. But I think looking at just what has happened since these folks kind of boosted this early, it shows how quickly this stuff can be circulated, and we don't really know where some of this is coming from.
Well, that's true. I say with an issue like this, I mean, I'm sure there are, uh, uh, Russians who would like to exploit issues like this because they try to find anything divisive in America to increase division and cause problems. But xenophobic, nativist, and anti-immigrant sentiment is so strong naturally in the United States right now. We've been having a burst of this sort of sentiment in recent years. That any amount that they can, whatever they could do to add to that is sort of like bringing coals to Newcastle. There's already so much of it that would be there, regardless of whether or not they're paying someone. And the people they were paying would be doing those exact same things anyway, because they themselves have anti-immigrant sentiments. So I think it's important to note that, in the case of anti-immigrant sentiment in the United States and anti-immigrant demonization in the United States, the call is coming from inside the building, right? We have plenty of intolerant and hateful people here in this country who can't stand the thought of someone who's a migrant living in their community or in any community.
I want to ask you about one other thing that happened this weekend. The Portage County Sheriff had posted on Facebook, and this is a quote: "Write down the addresses of the people who had her," meaning Kamala Harris's, "signs in their yards. So when the illegal human locust," and that's in quotes, which she supports, he says, "need places to live, will already have the addresses of their new families who supported their arrival." In a lot of ways, that's not just problematic, that's scary, right?
Yeah, that is that's scary on two different levels. First of all, and again, this is another long-standing trope, using dehumanizing words like locusts to refer to immigrants is another thing that incites harm against immigrants and can help inspire hate crimes. And then the other aspect of it is to take down the names of political opponents, like people who may have Kamala Harris street signs on their front yards. That is something that is intimidating, to anybody, in that area. And that is using the authority of the sheriff. And in Ohio, sheriffs have lots of power. That is using the authority of law enforcement to intimidate people for political reasons. And it's not surprising that many Republicans in Portage County have spoken out against it, that they also found that very objectionable, because I think any reasonable person would find language like that objectionable.
As we come closer to election day, we've heard a lot of talk about election security. And I'm wondering, should we be concerned about not just election security, but also voter intimidation, and also about potential violence on election day, bomb threats at polling places? Should these be concerns for us as we go toward the election?
Well, we're such a polarized, divided country right now. There's so much suspicion. There's there's so much suspicion and distrust on both sides that it's very easy for a non-event, someone sees someone suspicious of a polling place and misinterprets that to mean something, or to make a small actual event a much larger event, or there's all sorts of ways that problems could emerge. I will say, in terms of events leading up to election day or on election day, over the past two election cycles, those have been relatively limited, and divisions are greater now than they were before. But I think they will probably still be. The odds are, and I'm a historian, not a psychic, so I'm much better at predicting the past than predicting the future. But I think the odds are that the chances for serious incidents up to election day are relatively low. I think there's more of a chance on election day during the vote counting period, especially if that becomes extended, like in a very close race where you can't necessarily call a winner very easily, or there may be a recount or something like that. And then depending upon who is declared the winner in a particular state, there may be a much greater chance for something to happen from the time the election, from election day onward.
Pitcavage notes the riot and attempted insurrection on January 6, 2021 as an example. 80 people from Ohio have faced charges from the attack on the U.S. Capitol that day.